plata o plomo. Ustedes eligen.
Number 20, the Arellano Felix family. After the arrest of Mexican drug lord Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo in 1989, his cartel broke up into 3 factions. One of those was the Tijuana cartel, handed down to his 7 nephews and 4 nieces, the Arellano Felix family. Smuggling cocaine and marijuana to eager consumers in the United States, they became one of the largest and most violent organizations in Mexico. However, after many of the brothers were incarcerated or killed, the group lost substantial territory in Baja California to the Sinaloa cartel, one of the other factions from Gallardo's empire. The Tijuana cartel is now headed by Enedina Arellano Felix, one of the few female criminal leaders in the world. Number 19, Bumpy Johnson.
Happy Thanksgiving!
Born Ellsworth Raymond Johnson in South Carolina, Big Bumpy Johnson was sent to Harlem in 1919 to live with his sister. His parents hoped it would improve his behavior, but instead, he met gangster William Hewitt and began working for him. Johnson subsequently embarked in a war with mob boss Doug Schultz and became a successful drug trafficker. He served 2 prison terms and was arrested over 40 times.
Bumpy's reputation was split, often referred to as Robin Hood. He was just about as notorious for handing out turkeys during the holidays and giving money to those who needed it as he was for his illegal activities.
In 1952, he was arrested and sentenced to the world-famous Alcatraz prison, where he may have aided in the legendary escapes of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Number 18, Ismael Zambara Garcia. This narco has been called Mexico's last drug kingpin, and with good reason. Otherwise known as El Mayo, Zambara has sole leadership of the Sinaloa cartel, previously run in association with the likes of El Chapo. Originally a farmer, Ismael Zambara Garcia later immersed himself in the trafficking of Colombian cocaine. In fact, his career dates back to the early days of the Colombian drug trafficker Pablo Escobar, making this Mexican drug lord a mythical name in the business. He's never been arrested, and he's been known to physically alter his appearance through plastic surgery. Decade after decade, Garcia looms over the Sinaloa cartel, while somehow evading authorities. Number 17, Ramon Arellano Felix. Of the infamous Arellano Felix family, it's Ramon who deserves his own entry.
He was a character, but he was ruthless. I can tell you firsthand that he didn't have a conscience. Everybody knew he'd kill you for just looking at him wrong.
The most ruthless member of the family, Ramon was in charge of the cartel's enforcement. His build was certainly imposing and may have resulted in his role as enforcer. Ramon stood at 6 feet 2 inches and weighed 220 pounds. In 1997, Ramon was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, and the following year, he sanctioned a hit in Baja California that resulted in the deaths of 18 people, all from the same family and including several children. Ramon was killed in 2002 during a traffic stop. During the famous trial of El Chapo in 2018, cartel accountant Jesus Zambara Garcia testified that Ramon was whacked by dirty cops on the orders of El Chapo. Number 16, Nikki Barnes. One of the successors to Bumpy Johnson, Nikki Barnes controlled much of the New York drug trade throughout the 1970s. Barnes is famous for forming the Council, a group of African-American criminals who worked closely with the Italian mafia to distribute heroin across North America.
The narcotics would be placed in the automobile. They would be dropped at a pre-designated location. They would be picked up by whoever I assigned to pick it up. And then the business would function like a well-oiled machine.
He became known as Mr. Untouchable and enjoyed spending his fortune on fashion, publicly displaying an air of style and confidence. Barnes was finally arrested in 1978 and vindictively turned informant after learning that another council member was sleeping with his mistress. He implicated over 100 people, leading to the indictments of 44 traffickers.
When the time arrived for me to actually testify to them on the stand, I was overwhelmed by guilt. And I had been betrayed. I had every reason to testify against them and no reason at all to feel guilty.
Released from prison in 1998, he lived under witness protection until his death in 2012. Number 15, Frank Lucas.
I bought Harlem, I own Harlem, I ran Harlem.
Famously portrayed by Denzel Washington in the 2007 film American Gangster, this North Carolina native handled his business directly and violently.
So you are what you are in this world. That's either one or two things. Either you're somebody, or you're nobody.
While the Ridley Scott film took some creative license with its depiction of Frank Lucas, there's no denying that he was a larger-than-life character with a knack for surviving. Even with numerous jail stints during the 70s and 80s, Lucas somehow managed to survive the perils of the drug industry and claimed to have made over $1 million per day. Despite all the glitz and glamour, the massive unloading of heroin upon the streets of New York City vastly affected an entire generation. Number 14. Osiel Cárdenas Guillén. This Mexican man was working as a mechanic when he became involved with drug lord Juan Garcia Abrego. Following Abrego's arrest in 1996, Cárdenas killed his rival Salvador Gomez and began leading the Gulf Cartel.
The Gulf guys are big time mostly because they control the Laredo crossing, and thus the I-35 corridor.
He also created Los Zetas, formed from deserters of the Mexican army. They served as the enforcement wing of the Gulf Cartel and became infamous for their horrific violence.
The Zetas have more capability than Al-Qaeda does today to operate inside the United States.
Despite this, Cárdenas remained under the radar. That is, until he held FBI and DEA agents at gunpoint and became the target of a manhunt. He was placed on the most wanted list and was finally arrested after a gunfight in 2003. Guillén is currently serving a 25-year sentence at USP Terre Haute. Number 13. Raco Morabito. This Italian mobster was literally born into a life of crime. Being related to mob boss Giuseppe Morabito, Giuseppe ran a crime syndicate in southern Italy known as 'Ndrangheta.
The 'Ndrangheta is currently thought to have around 60,000 members in 400 groups operating in some 30 countries. Its revenues are estimated at some 53 billion euros, making it Europe's most powerful crime syndicate by far.
Raco took the family business and began trafficking cocaine between South America and Italy. In October of 1994, Morabito became a fugitive and hid out in countries like Brazil and Uruguay. He remained hidden from the eye of the law for 23 years, but he was eventually found in 2017 after enrolling his daughter in high school under his surname. Morabito was arrested and sent to prison, but he escaped with 3 other inmates through a hole in the roof. He was recaptured in Brazil in May of 2021. Number 12. Cocky Curtis Warren. This Englishman rose to prominence in the late 80s by partnering with a drug trafficker named Brian Charrington. With Charrington's yacht, the two traveled to Venezuela and became entangled with Colombia's Cali cartel, agreeing to smuggle cocaine across country borders in shipments of lead ingots. By the late 90s, Warren had amassed a fortune worth tens of millions of pounds, and he was running a smuggling operation through his personal vineyard in Bulgaria.
Well, he's a prolific criminal, and this was just the start of what we thought was going to be another build-up to more significant trafficking in the past.
His villa was eventually raided, and authorities found 125 million pounds worth of drugs, weapons, and cash. After spending time in a Dutch prison, Warren was arrested again in 2007 under conspiracy to smuggle drugs and was sentenced to 13 years behind bars. Number 11. Christopher Koch. Another man born into crime, Christopher Koch was the son of drug lord Lester Koch, who founded the Jamaican organization Shower Posse. The cartel was composed of violent drug smugglers with territories in Canada, the United Kingdom, and the US. Christopher was assimilated into his father's business, and when the patriarch passed away in 1992, Koch began running the Shower Posse at just 23 years old.
He became the kind of person that the politicians in Jamaica pursued, to say the least.
In 2010, the Jamaican military tried extraditing Koch to the US, but his cartel fought back. The result was the Kingston unrest, which resulted in over 73 deaths. Koch was finally captured while attempting to disguise himself as a woman and sentenced to 23 years in prison.
Since Koch's capture, Jamaica's murder rate has plummeted 32%. And in Canada, those series of gang raids has put Toronto's murder rate at a 25-year low.
Number 10. Rafael Caro Quintero. This man is one of the most powerful people in the Mexican drug trade.
He made what now is called the Guadalajara cartel, using the roads of Guadalajara to send drugs to the United States, especially marijuana.
Not only did he co-found the Guadalajara cartel with Miguel Felix Gallardo, but he's also the brother of Miguel Quintero, who once ran the Sonora cartel. During his time with the Guadalajara cartel, Quintero was involved in the kidnapping and murder of several people, including DEA agent Kiki Camarena and American journalist John Clay Walker. After serving 28 years of a 40-year sentence, he was released in 2013. But U.S. authorities immediately called for his rearrest.
The U.S. Justice Department has said it's extremely disappointed by the decision to free Quintero and has made it clear it has a continued interest in securing his extradition to the United States.
Today, Quintero is suspected of running the Caborca cartel, based out of Sonora. He remains at large, and at $20 million, he has the biggest bounty of anyone on the FBI's most wanted list. Number 9. Arturo Beltran Leba. As the man that reportedly introduced El Chapo to the drug trafficking trade, this narco was originally groomed by the Lord of the Skies, Amado Kio Fuentes. Alongside his 4 brothers, Arturo Beltran Leba protected the Sinaloa cartel as the leader of the hit squad Fuerzas Especiales de Arturo. Yet after a 2008 beef with El Chapo and the subsequent murder of El Chapo's son, Leba and company aligned with other factions while further establishing themselves through complete violence and political corruption. As the heat intensified and a $2 million reward was put out, Leba found himself cornered by the Mexican Marines, resulting in one of the more controversial narco deaths of the 21st century. Number 8. Felix Mitchell. Before cocaine took over the United States in the 1980s, this Oakland native was the preeminent heroin distributor in his native California. Leading the '69 mob, Felix Mitchell, also known as Felix the Cat, amassed such power that his lifestyle inspired a wealth of gangs, all gunning for the elite status associated with the Oakland narco. Mitchell's 1985 conviction and subsequent jailhouse murder essentially opened the door for even more Bay Area violence, defying the expectations of the government. Meanwhile, international news coverage of his funeral procession only cemented his status among dealers and the community at large. Number 7. Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo. The story of Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo has been immortalized in Netflix's Narcos Mexico, in which he's portrayed by Diego Luna. Known as both the boss of bosses and the godfather, Gallardo co-founded the Guadalajara cartel in the late 70s. Thanks to strong connections with Colombian drug traffickers, the Guadalajara cartel controlled much of the Mexican drug trade throughout the 80s and shipped narcotics between Mexico and the United States. His downfall came after the kidnapping and killing of DEA agent Kiki Camarena. Gallardo was arrested in '89 and sentenced to 37 years in prison. He's now living out his days in a small cell in a maximum security prison. Number 6. Grela Blanco. Known as the Godmother among other names, this Colombian narco preceded the rise of Pablo Escobar.
Pablo Escobar was stealing cars when she was already trafficking 3,400 pounds of cocaine.
Although Grela Blanco is mostly known for her Miami-Medellin connection, she was originally the leader of a New York City drug ring during the mid-70s. Reportedly the mastermind of up to 200 murders, Blanco's lack of empathy and $80 million per month distribution network led to some turbulent years in South Florida, as the cocaine cowboys dominated the Miami drug scene. Even in the face of a 1985 arrest and subsequent conviction, Grela managed to maintain a long-standing presence in the cocaine industry until she was ultimately killed in a 2012 drive-by shooting after a return to Medellin. Number 5. Kuna. Undoubtedly the most famous drug lord of the infamous Golden Triangle, this narco was less about glitz and more about guerrilla warfare, though the Burma-born Chang Chi-Fu's moniker, Kuna, which means Prince Prosperous, may suggest otherwise. And as the commander-in-chief of his own army, Kuna evolved into the definitive opium dealer. He also worked with the aforementioned Frank Lucas to bring 90% pure drug product into the United States, effectively hooking even more addicts due to the substantial quality increase.
Then there'll be more, much more, I guarantee it.
And if it's all the same to you, I don't want to have to drag my ass up here no more.
Of course not.
My man.
Kunsa supposedly surrendered to authorities in 1996, but was never arrested, meaning he managed to stay a free man in self-imposed retirement until his death in 2007. Number 4. Omar Kio Fuentes. In 2014, the leader of the violent Juarez cartel, Vicente Kio Fuentes, was arrested, ending a turbulent reign over Mexico. But it was his older brother, Amado Kio Fuentes, that originally made the organization such a threat to their peers in the cocaine industry. Known as El Señor de los Cielos, or Lord of the Skies, Amado Kio Fuentes took control in 1993 upon the murder of boss Rafael Aguilar Guajardo. Fuentes' time in the drug trade earned him as much as $25 billion, while his jet fleet used for laundering money back and forth between Mexico and Colombia earned him respect, if not notoriety. In a strange twist of events, however, Fuentes mysteriously passed away during a 1997 plastic surgery procedure, while the doctors involved paid the ultimate price. Number 3. Freeway Rick Ross. Not to be confused with the rapper Rick Ross. This is the man that controlled the Los Angeles drug trade for the entirety of the 80s. In fact, the influence of Freeway Rick Ross extended deep into American pop culture, as he was the most prolific cocaine distributor thanks to a Nicaraguan connection. What began as a Southern Californian operation evolved into a billion-dollar business, with Ross becoming directly tied to the Iran-Contra affair, as depicted in the 2014 film Kill the Messenger.
I was buying 100 kilos a week, selling $3 million a day, and still couldn't get rid of that inventory fast enough, man. It was raining coke.
It's safe to say there's never been an American narco more talked about than Freeway Rick Ross.
You start to be around a certain thing and then you kind of get immune to it, where it's not really, it doesn't bother you anymore.
Number 2. Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo. Since the late 70s, this elusive drug lord has been affiliated with organized crime. As the kingpin of the Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo has been infamously connected to the influx of cocaine in the United States. Even so, he's become somewhat of a mythical figure for his brazen escapes from prison.
Prison authorities inside Altiplano lost visual contact with Mr. Guzman.
And certainly for his controversial interview with Sean Penn.
We all want this drug problem to stop.
Over the course of several decades, Joaquin Guzman Loera established himself as a vicious and uncompromising narco, showing no mercy for his enemies while accumulating unfathomable power and wealth in the process. Known as the Last Godfather, El Chapo's reach extends far beyond his native Mexico.
Will El Chapo get extradited? What will become of his empire?
Number 1. Pablo Escobar. In life, this Colombian was a folk hero to some, and public enemy number 1 for others. And in death, Pablo Escobar's legacy has been extensively documented, both in film and television. In his rise to power, El Padrino capitalized fully on the public's wants and needs, manipulating those around him while silencing anyone who posed a threat. As a result, Escobar's unprecedented empire made Colombia the central headquarters for a worldwide import-export operation, with international authorities at the mercy of something they didn't fully understand. But as Pablo Escobar continued to push back against law enforcement pushed even harder, leading to a violent yet final confrontation in 1993, in which he was killed by Colombian National Police.